when you purchase it. So there is a solar program if you want to purchase. No, well, it's offered to the DCEO. DCEO has it. There's a website. You can go watch it. I think it's cash. I'm not sure exactly how it sounds about the details. But you can go on there and get it. Yep.
Is there any regulation or encouragement? I go to like a lot of businesses and other buildings, and they have sensors. So if you walk down the aisle of a store, the light will go on. If you know he walks down, the light will go on. Is there any encouragement for businesses to do that?
Well, we set new, both commercial and residential buildings now. We do have energy efficiency codes. So those get phased in for new ones. That's also highly encouraged to that. I assume you guys know about the LEED program, the federal, so there's obviously some encouragements for that. We've built it into any time that the state government is doing building or contracting out for building, they can now offer discounts off costs basis for the proposals if they're doing it in an energy efficiency manner. And there's certain ways you have to measure that in order to encourage the use of energy efficient buildings that the state is purchasing. So we've been trying to build into what the state does to encourage it, as well as through the codes. We had as a model code. Our codes that we do at the state is sort of a model baseline. Then localities really dictate what their building codes are. They can use the state as the model base, or they can make them more stringent if they want to. Chicago has tended to be a little more stringent on this stuff, which has been a good thing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Turn it back to Bill.
Thank you.
And how are we doing? Should we hook up the mic, or is everyone hearing okay?
What?
Funny guy in your group. I'm going to be even more brief than Heather, but I did want to bring you up to date on a couple things. Like so many other aspects of city government, the city is doing some things really well and some things not so well with respect to energy efficiency and clean energy. They had a few years ago, the city presented its climate action plan, which by and large received rave reviews. It's a very ambitious plan with very ambitious goals, and really seemed to underscore the city's recognition that climate change and global warming were indeed issues that were important. And like a number of cities, the city of Chicago felt that it had to step into the void because this was during the Bush years, and there was not only inaction but denial on the part of large parts of the Bush administration about whether climate change was even an issue. And you would find that in one of the proposals in the city's climate action plan was to clean up two of the city's coal-fired power plants. The Fisk plant and the Crawford plant, which were built around the turn of the century, and not this century, but last century. And while they underwent significant retooling in the 1950s, even by that standard, they are ancient plants. They are as old, if not older than me. So that's pretty old. And when the Clean Air Act went into effect back in 1972, was it? One of the compromises was that all these existing coal-fired power plants were grandfathered in. In other words, they weren't put under the restrictions of the new law. The argument being, well, these plants are going to be going out of business anyway. They're old, they're inefficient, they're going to be going out of business, so it really isn't necessary two of the dirtiest plants around right here in the city of Chicago, in two of the most densely populated neighborhoods that surround any coal-fired power plant anywhere in the country. The two power plants with the most population density within their site are these two power plants. And despite the promises of the Climate Action Plan, the city of Chicago and Daley administration, for whatever reason, has not seen fit to really try to do anything about it. So, a year ago, I worked with a number of environmental groups and health groups, a coalition that has grown to over 40 organizations, maybe even over 50 now. We introduced the Chicago Clean Power Ordinance, which called for restrictions on carbon dioxide emissions from the two power plants, as well as the fine particulate matter that scientists and health officials now believe is one of the leading causes of respiratory diseases in the city of Chicago, which has one of the highest asthma rates in the nation. And we introduced this ordinance a year ago, and it sat in this, it was referred to the City Council Rules Committee, which is a committee where oftentimes progressive legislation goes to die. And it was there for quite a number of months, and finally, with enough good organizing on the part of the coalition of groups, we were able to finally get it out of the committee, the Rules Committee, and put it into a joint committee of health and the Energy, Environment, and Environmental Protection Committee and Public Utilities Committee of the Chicago City Council. Where then again it sat for we got that moved last November, and it stayed there resting for several more months. I finally had a hearing of my own, an unofficial hearing in February that I just conducted, which garnered some media attention, and I think finally prompted the city, the Daley administration, to finally agree to hold hearings, which were held 2 weeks ago in the city council. And it was a day-long series of hearings, and for the first time, Midwest Generation finally sat up and took notice. You know, the old Gandhi saying, I don't know what you call it, but at first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you. Well, we're at the fighting stage, and they showed up trucking in hundreds of their workers to fill most of the seats in the council chambers, to block most of our folks from getting in. Time-worn tactic. But they have unfortunately succeeded in convincing the workers and convincing the union that represents the workers that if this ordinance passes, it will threaten their jobs, that the plants will close and their jobs are out. So I had really quite the ironic incident take place where the same power plant company officials who, when they took over the plant 20 years ago and moved to try to be certified a union, those same union workers were standing up and applauding them when they came into the room. Again, because they convinced them that their jobs were risk. And while we showed through testimony that it isn't the case, that number one, throughout history, whenever anyone attempts to regulate worker safety or wages and benefits of workers, or the health and safety of workers, or the health and safety in the environment of the surrounding community, what's the first thing industry does? It says, well, you're going to force us out, you're going to shut us down, you're going to cost jobs. And time again, what we find out after a lot of kicking and screaming is you drag them into compliance, and you end up having cleaner plants, safer working conditions, and a better economy environment for everybody. And in addition to that, we've shown that the technology is available, number one, to put restrictions on the amount of fine particulate matter that's spewed into the air, and number two, that there are ways cleaner ways that that they can provide the electricity to their customers. And I hesitate to say to the city because it really isn't to the city. One of the other ironic things is these plants aren't selling their power here locally. They're selling it to, they're producing electricity and selling it to companies, utility companies out east, provide electricity for people out east. So, this company, which is now was bought by California companies, they're earning the profits out in California. They're providing the energy to people out east, and we get the pollution and help the ill effects right here in the city of Chicago. Well, we had a full day of hearings, and Chairman announced right at the beginning she wasn't going to take a vote, but I think we accomplished one of the things, which is we can put more attention on this issue. We got a lot of media coverage that day. People are my colleagues and their constituents are being educated on the issues. And it also caught the attention of our new mayor, who I met with on this issue, talked with on this issue, and he has committed to working with us to clean the power plants. He believes that there may be other avenues to do that, but he sees the ordinance as being a really effective tool at bringing the company to the table and getting them to agree to undertake steps to clean the plants. We'll see. I'm going to obviously hold the Mayor Randall to his word and look forward to working with him in the weeks and months to come to achieve what we're trying to do, which is clean up those plants. So, with that, I want to talk to you a little bit before I turn it over to Bill. Talk a little bit about something I think the city is doing very well, and that is the efforts to provide incentives and support to people to make their homes, their buildings more energy efficient. One of the, we've talked a lot about how power plants contribute to global warming, and they indeed are a very big factor in doing that. But you know what contributes to global warming and climate change more than anything else? Buildings. Inefficient buildings. Buildings that aren't weatherized, buildings that allow heat and air to leak out or leak in. They are contributing to about 70% of the global warming gases that are emitted here in the city of Chicago. And so, the city of Chicago is implementing this summer a new program called the Chicago Energy Efficient Building Retrofit Strategy, which is a sort of a joint effort with the state of Illinois, the Illinois Department of Commerce, the Citizen Utility Board, and about 25 community-based organizations that are going to work in concert to get the message out and get the word out about energy efficiency, about this, and they're going to roll out, I'm told, a new set of programs and incentives to tax